Hello, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural Applied AI Invited Speaker Series. Today, we're happy to have Dr. Shruti Kulkarni, who is a research scientist at Oak Ridge National Laboratory in the Learning Systems Group. Her research spans different aspects of neuromorphic computing, including algorithms, applications, simulators, and hardware code design. She was formerly a postdoc at Oak Ridge National Lab, advised by Dr. Catherine Schumann, working on different techniques to implement learning to learn frameworks for neuromorphic computing. She received her PhD in 2019 from the New Jersey Institute of Technology with a major in electrical engineering under the guidance of Dr. Bipin Rajendran. Her dissertation was on bio-inspired learning and hardware acceleration with emerging memories. She has 19 peer-reviewed journal and conference publications, and we're very happy to have her today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Shruti.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, everyone, for attending this talk. A pleasure to give talk about some of my recent research works at Oak Ridge National Lab. Let me get started. So my talk is going to be on one of our recent projects that we did with an application in the high energy physics experiments. Basically, it was on sensor data filtering using neuromorphic computing for high energy physics. So I'll go over the different aspects of this work. And before I go into this, since Dennis already gave my introduction, I'll also just quickly go over my research, my background. I'm a research scientist at the lab, and my current research areas are in spiking neural networks, neuromorphic simulators, and we've also currently developing an HPC scale neuromorphic simulator called Super Neuro. And last year it also won the R&D 100 award. And apart from the software, algorithms and simulator development, I've also been a part of various projects that span, the core design or the hardware design, along with the algorithmic development using post-Moore or the non-volatile memory technologies. So with that, let me go into deep dive into get started with neuromorphic computing for those so that everyone is familiar with what is the model and the computing framework that we use in this particular work. So the motivation of so basically neuromorphic computing is the computing inspired by the human or the biological brain. And the motivation behind this is, if we compare, in rough estimates, the number of operations per joule of the world's, fastest supercomputer with the human brain. In rough terms, the operations are at par. But if you look at the power consumption, it's almost 6 orders of magnitude much less. The human brain consumes much less power, or 6 orders of magnitude much less than the supercomputer. So the goal is, can we take abstracted models of, how the computing happens in the brain and try to reproduce that, or try to at least get the energy efficiency part of it in terms of developing artificial intelligence solutions. So one such model that we heavily depend on are the spiking neural networks. These are the type of neural networks, as you can see, they operate on these binary spikes. And the network architecture is pretty much similar to how you would find, in traditional artificial neural networks, which is again, inspired by the nervous system, the connections between neurons and synapses within the human brain. But as opposed to traditional deep neural networks, which operate on real valued data, spiking neural networks operates on these typical event-like signals, also called as spikes, hence the name spiking neural network. So the key underlying points, that the hypothesis is that using computation with binary with sparse events, and typically these binary valued sparse events, is one of the possible reason behind the neuromorphic computing models giving rise to, or could lead to, a very great energy efficiency. So this is at the network level. Now, what goes into a spiking neuron? And And also, like, there are certain dynamics associated with the synapse as well. So, so as I mentioned here, the input and output are basically, these binary valued events or spikes. And the connection is called as synapse, which is the parameters that we typically associate with the synapse are its synaptic weight and also the delay, which gives rise to the inherent temporal dynamics within the spiking neural network. And in case of a spiking neuron, while there are several bioplausible models that are reported from neurobiological studies and also from computational neuroscience studies, but for most of the neuromorphic applications, we look at a very simple abstracted model called as the leaky integrate and fire model. In very simple terms, what it means that there are like certain parameters associated with spiking neuron, like the threshold and the leak. So what a spiking neuron in simple terms does is that it basically accumulates the charge arriving on its synapse, and as the accumulated charge exceeds and then if and then it also has a leak dynamics inherent to its mechanism. And if that accumulated charge exceeds a particular threshold over time, then it issues a spike, which is then propagated to the downstream neurons. So this is the underlying model of how a spiking neuron and biologically inspired synapse behave. And these have and using these abstracted models is how we look at different solutions in designing uh, uh, energy efficient and coming up with AI solutions for energy efficient and area constrained systems. So again, a bit of the background on as a neuromorphic engineer, how do you what does it mean by developing a neuromorphic solution? So by this we mean that given what does a neuromorphic computer require? So so a typical neuromorphic hardware is designed such a way that it realizes the computing elements computing elements in terms of neurons and synapses, and also the data that is transmitted between these elements are these binary spike packets. So in order to realize a given model or a what we would need to do is to cast a problem as a spiking neural network, either using machine learning methods or basically some kind of learning methods or some kind of hand tooling methods in a given environment. And then for a given problem that you want to solve. And once we know the problem and also how the network can be constructed, we basically come up with this the solution in terms of this network of neurons and synapses, and which can be eventually realized on the neuromorphic hardware. What the software framework that we have used in our work is called the 10 Lab Neuromorphic Framework, which is like a joint development, which has primarily been developed by the University of Tennessee, and we at Oak Ridge National Lab also collaborate with them and also contribute to this broader framework. So this framework basically, covers all the different stacks, the computing, all the top to bottom stacks, all the way ranging from data acquisition to how do you want to understand, develop the solution for a given application, what algorithms you want to use, and then going below from the software stack, from the software level down to the architecture and the specific hardware or the specific software simulator that you want to realize your solution on. So and another next is in terms of so I talked about the overall broader framework that we use, and now going into the crucial aspect of how do you carve out a given neuromorphic solution for a given problem. So while machine learning typically uses what is called as backpropagation or gradient descent based training, in case of spiking neural networks, as you saw that the data that the activations of a neuron are basically spikes or events in time, sparse events in time. So we cannot directly apply, the machine learning, the machine learning way of training, rather the deep learning way of training these neural networks. While there are several approximations that people have reported, in our group, what we have primarily relied on is the evolutionary optimization method, and one of that method that my mentor Katie Schumann had developed is called EONS, which is basically the evolutionary optimization for neuromorphic systems. So, and the way it operates is basically you start off with a random population of these spiking neural networks, and which then goes into an evaluation phase, and then the individual networks are ranked from the best to worst, followed by a parent selection strategy, which could be either like a tournament selection or any other selection strategy, followed by the reproduction operator, which where several genetic operators like mutation and crossover are applied to result into the offspring population. And so this whole process is repeated for multiple generations till we come up with the best performing network for the given problem. So so for us, the evaluation phase is the step where we basically apply the given the data corresponding to our given application, and then measure the fitness functions to see which of the networks which of the resulting networks are performing the best. So the best things about this evolutionary optimization is that is for a spiking neural network, there are several parameters associated with both the neuron as well as the synapse. So for a synapse, as I mentioned earlier, there are like weights and delays, and for a neuron, there is threshold and leak parameters that govern the overall dynamics of the spiking neural network. So all of these parameters are concurrently optimized through this evolutionary process. And apart from the individual the parameters of these synapse and neuron components, the what this EONS features is that it can also optimize the topology, which means that the connections can also change over multiple generations. And it's a very useful co-design tool wherein we can basically put in the constraints of a given application as well as the hardware in order to come up with the best neural network, best SNN for the given hardware and for the given problem. Uh, and uh, and the only caveat is that because we need to evaluate multiple individual networks, it can be slow to train. So as of now, the scalability is a bit limited, but we are still that's something that the group at UTK is working on. So so that's a bit of background on SNNs and our training strategy that we use. Coming on to the motivation of using SNN or the neuromorphic computing for scientific experiments, one of the prior work that was done or where which basically basically motivated the exploration of SNNs for scientific and these high energy physics experiments. Was in where like a spiking neural network with purely random connectivity was applied in a neutron was applied in case of a neutron scattering experiment at the Fermi National Lab. Uh, and the task was to identify the regions where the particle interactions originated, and it was also compared with a 13 layered CNN, like a very deep convolution neural network, versus like a very small and sparsely connected SNN. So in terms of the performance, they were almost equivalent, with the SNN winning in terms of the overall network parameters. So this was one of the prior works that was done in case of as an example for scientific experiment. now the recent work that I was involved in was again also with the Fermi National Lab, wherein they are looking at basically studying the next generation of particle detectors for the Large Hadron Collider. And so the challenge here is that the detectors would are going to be highly granular, having like over a billion sensor channel, which is going to result in over petabits per second of raw data. And then we obviously don't want to store that large amount of data. And another thing is that only a very small fraction of this large data contains useful physics events. So the goal for the physicists is like can we reduce the amount of data going into off detector chips while still that only retains the high quality of information that is coming at the detector. Um, so basically, the problem here is, can you make the sensors smart enough to to retain the most crucial information while rejecting the rest of the collision data that it receives. So one feature that we made use of was that as the charge clusters that is gathered at the detector due to the particle collision. If we look at the shapes and also the timing information of these, the charge clusters at the sensor level, uh, the goal is to can you filter out the low momentum clusters from these from the overall from the entire particle the clusters that sorry the charge that is received by the sensor, as the low momentum clusters are not of particular interest in these high energy physics studies. So, so the problem that was carved out was, can you develop a machine? Can you develop a smart model that can basically fit on those, the highly granular sensors, as well as be able to identify the high momentum clusters from there and reject the low, low momentum clusters, or basically distinguish the high and the low momentum clusters with certain, momentum threshold, which in our case was 2 giga electron volts. So, and the solution also requires that this the hardware, the sensor, the model in the sensor be extremely low latency that can produce the decision in the order of few nanoseconds. So now this is basically a machine learning problem, which means that we need data to train our model. So this is how these are some of the examples of the data set that was simulated with the using the prior high energy physics the particle kinematics. And the tool that was used by our collaborators at John Hopkins and Fermilab was called as the Pixel AV. Um, and then the basically like so basically what was simulated was how the interactions in the future pixel detector would take place given various physical parameters of the actual detector to be fed into the Pixel AV simulation tool. So these data sets are also have been made publicly available, and this is so these are the charge clusters data that we used in our problem as well. So what you see here is like the time evolution of the charge taken with this 13 by 21 frame of pixels. You have 20 frames of these pixels lasting for about 4 nanoseconds, and each frame appears at every 200 picoseconds. So so this is a bit more details on how the particle collision happens on the detector. And as you can see is that, as a particle, as the collision happens with the censored array, there are like, the curved tracks basically represent the low momentum clusters, whereas the straight tracks, more or less represent the high momentum tracks. So essentially, what it implies is, in the physical, in the 2D shape of the charge, using the 2D shape as well as certain timing information, can be make the distinguish or sorry can be distinguished between the high and the low momentum charge clusters using the spiking neural networks. And so one particular data set that we used, or that we got from our collaborators, had a distribution of PT, as shown here, where you can see that there are like significant amount of particles, or charge clusters that have momentum below 2 GeV, and then only a small fraction of it lies above 2 GeV. However, since and also another thing was, since I mentioned earlier that we want to basically filter out 2 GeV, but it's I think so. What our collaborators wanted was that the signal efficiency, that means as you go as the true momentum of the particle goes becomes higher, we want the classification performance of the network to be uh, you know almost going to the accuracy going to 100%, whereas below the 2 GeV doesn't matter so much, because it's more or less the goal is to be filter them out. And so basically what we're looking at is the turn on curves, which I'll go in shortly in my coming slides. Um, so this was how we, basically, this was a flow of implementing a neuromorphic solution to, perform this on-sensor, charge cluster filtering of of this data. So in order to be able to visualize the charge clusters in a three-dimensional space, uh, what I showed earlier was like a video of 13 by 21 pixel image of how the charge clusters are evolving in time. So you can basically consider it to be like a three-dimensional block of cloud, uh, with wherein every single channel in this 13 by 21 or 273 channels has like a waveform of the charge evolving over time. And in order to so the one approach towards converting them into spikes was to basically perform like a temporal conversion of a differential temporal convert encoding of the waveform to spike trains. So what we had was, and what is typically done in some of the neuromorphic sensors, is to look at how the charge is rising over time, and also how that waveform is falling over time. And we had two channels, one for the rise time that captures the temporal the time variation of the waveform as it rises, and also as it falls, or as it decreases. So every channel in this 13 by 21 pixel stream had basically had two streams of spikes, one for the rising dynamics, and one for the falling dynamics. So what we did was to take like a differential of how as the charge waveform rises every rises by 400 electrons. We basically generate a spike, which is like, and then and the same thing on the falling edge as well. So once we have these spikes generated, the spike data is then given to the SNN, which is now trained in eons in our 10 lab framework, to identify two classes, like basically we have two output classes, one for the low PT clusters and one for the high PT clusters. Um, so yeah, so I think this should have been yeah, one for identifying the low and the high PT based on a variable threshold during training. And another important consideration, as opposed along with the temporal dynamics, was also to look at in what direction or can we further compress the spike data spatially, and then feed it into and then feed it into the spiking neural networks. So our initial data had like 273 channels, which is 13 times 21 channels. But another finding that our collaborators had was, it could, we don't need that many channels in order to make the decision. Rather, if you take the projection of the charge cluster, say along one of the X or Y, or maybe reduce it to a much smaller dimension, uh, the same we could potentially get the classification results. So what we also did was to explore the different spatial encoding schemes. And in case of spikes, what we did was we basically just took an OR of the spikes along the specified dimensions. So along the rows, we basically had just 13 channels, where or 13 so the 13 channels, but with spikes, it essentially becomes two, because we have both the rising as well as the falling edge, not shown here. Um, or take the projection along the 21, the y dimensions, or make like a smaller segmented projection of these larger the full scale image. So this was also one of our exploratory search space that we considered. Just to give like a how the ORing happens in case of spikes. This is an example shown here. So this is our original image or like a temporal frame from the cluster that evolves over time. So if we were to do like a column-wise reduction, we would basically just look at which of the columns have a spike, and if there is a spike, the resulting 21 channels, each of the 21 channels would have a spike or no spike if none of the if none of the channels had a spike in them. And similarly, if you look at row-wise, what we do here is look at all the rows in a given frame, in a given time frame, and generate a spike if there is if there is a if there is either one or two or multiple spikes in that particular time frame. So this is how the different spatial reduction were implemented. Um, so as you can imagine that this whole training and the training process had multiple at every phase of this pipeline, we had multiple hyperparameters which needed to be optimized, right from the data encoding to finally the training itself. From both, so initial encoding was, first we did a temporal encoding where we look at, the sampling time as well as, what is the voltage difference, or sorry, the difference of the waveform that we need to consider in order to generate a spike. So that's the temporal encoding. And then the next is, as we go into our basic into our framework, there is spatial encodings that we need to explore. Whether you want to do like a row stride or a column stride, or different scales of 2D maps, and and then the regular training hyperparameters, like how many number of epochs you want to use, and then the simulation time steps, and also with respect to the fitness function that is going to be used in eons, whether you want to use the accuracy or F1 or the penalty score. So these were the different fitness metrics that we had defined. And then eons itself had its own set of hyperparameters. So all of these, hyperparameters were, tuned using our, a tool that was developed at the lab called the DEFI, or the Data Efficient, framework for performance characterization. And it's a tool that we use for, several co-design studies, as well as, optimization studies. And the benefit of this is that it can basically, work across multiple nodes in a given cluster, and it tries to basically it gives us like a much streamlined way of evaluating different combinations of the search space. um, so now a little bit on the different fitness metrics that we used for the training of the spiking neural networks. The first one was the accuracy, which is the straightforward way of how many samples are correctly categorized into each of the predefined bins, whether is into their correct bins. So that is how the accuracy is defined. The other metric that we used, which was had some kind of a tolerance associated with it, because as per the problem specification, the most crucial aspect was to be able to the was to be able to identify the high PT samples accurately, whereas we could allow certain tolerance when identifying the low PT clusters, which eventually need to be rejected. So what we had was we defined a hyperbolic tangent based function, which looked at given a cutoff, how far is the true PT from the cutoff point of that differentiates the two classes. And then depending on whether the decision the neural network output was in the right the prediction of the output was correct or not, we created a fitness function. And with eons, uh, uh, the goal of eons is to maximize the fitness function. So basically, we defined our fitness function as the negative of the prediction error times the hyperbolic tangent of the difference of the true PT and the PT cutoff, where PT is the cluster momentum, or the particle momentum from the data set. Um, here in this case, basically, if the prediction is correct, then the fitness for that sample is 0. Whereas for if it is an incorrect, then basically we get a negative value for this, and we basically accumulate the fitness functions for all the samples over the entire epoch. So that's how we defined the penalty-based fitness. And then in our search space, we basically also had had accuracy penalty, and also used a combination of these different fitness functions. Um, and so yeah, so during so coming to the training and the evaluation metrics that and the evaluation metrics that we used during inference. Uh, so during training, what we did was basically, have different values for the threshold point for PT, so that it essentially eliminates the very low momentum particle with greater accuracy, and also keeps the high momentum particles, or identifies the high momentum particles with a much higher efficiency. So we had two different cutoff points during training and inference. And during training, what we did was basically load, since as you can see that the data set is highly imbalanced. So we basically did like a balancing of the two classes of the data set, depending on the training cutoff, and then loaded them, and then basically carried out like a batch-wise training of the neural network using eons. So we had almost 4 million samples for training and testing from our given data set. Um, and during inference, what we did was we had two different metrics. One was for measuring the efficiency which basically means that how well are the samples above the 2 GeV point correctly identified as high PT. And the other one was the data reduction, which is the other way, like how well are the samples that have the true momentum below GeV correctly identified as low PT. So essentially, the broad categories are the same. It's just a matter of how do we vary the threshold point of the cutoff, or the threshold point of separating the two categories during training and testing. So during training, if this was one of our search spaces, one of our hyperparameters in the overall search space as well. Um, oh, okay. Yeah. Now coming to the results of our evaluation. So as I mentioned, that there were numerous hyperparameters at different stages, going from the data encoding to the training itself. We noticed that as we look at the full 13 by 21 image versus like a projection of that 13 by 21 along the rows of with 13 channels itself. The rejection and the sorry the data rejection and the efficiency numbers were kind of like we had to do some sort of a trade-off between the two. Ideally, we would have wanted both of them, the points to lie on the top left corner, but we had a sort of a Pareto curve, which means that we to get like the best to get like an efficiency of 90%. The best rejection that we could get was somewhere close to 30%. And then we basically studied the trade-offs between the different hyperparameters. So in terms of looking at the projection based encoding, the projection based spatial encoding, the row stride 13 and several other column based projections, they were giving a much better efficiency. Um, and also we had another hyperparameters in terms of the time scale, or the time resolution of how do we encode the raw the waveform into spikes. We basically had to do some kind of upsampling or downsampling from the baseline of 200 picoseconds in order to generate, or in order to maintain the high quality of information. But we observed that the time resolution or the time scale on the for key for the spike trains did not matter that much. And then the next one was looking at the fitness metrics for training eons. Uh, so in order to get like a high efficiency, we observed that the penalty based metric was a better choice to train eons with. And also when we looked at the cutoff, the PT cutoff or the momentum threshold for dividing the two classes was high or the low PT values. Uh, we also observed that like having a smaller threshold was giving us a better efficiency in the inference stages. Um, so these are, yeah, some of the the training and the encoding strategies. And then a bit more deep dive into what are the different spatial encoding schemes that we looked at. So as you can see is this particular graph on the left shows how the training metrics the training fitness curve when we use the fitness penalty the penalty fitness function, how that how its value changed as we explored the different spatial encoding schemes. So the first one was as you can see that the projection on the y dimension, or the row stride 13 is what is roughly called as taking, or taking the projection of the charge, or the spike encoded charge clusters along the rows of along the 13 rows. So another, within this, we also explored certain other variations where we did like a row stride of 26, which means that we take like two columns at a time, and then basically keep and then take or along those lines. And then we have other ways, wherein a box 2 8 basically means like a box of dimension with 8 pixels along the rows and 2 pixels along the columns. And so we could see that having like stride along the rows or along the y dimension, or along the dimension which has 13 pixels, that resulted in a greater performance, or the greater efficiency. As you can see, uh, yeah, this so in terms of both the rejection, so we wanted both the rejection as well as the overall performance in terms of efficiency and rejection was how do we basically quantify that. While test efficiency was higher for as I showed in my earlier slide, that they were kind of showing like a Pareto front, in as the efficiency increased, the rejection decreased, but and as the rejection improved, the efficiency went down. So we kind of like chose a point wherein the efficiency was above 90, but and also the rejection was above 20%. So that's where we kind of figured out that row stride of 26 and row stride of 13 were the most well performing encoding strategies. And then finally, once we had the networks all the optimization all carried out using the DeFi framework. We basically trained the best set of, with the best set of hyperparameters for 1,000 epochs. And so what we saw was, the resulting network is not a straightforward layered network, but rather like a recurrent and a randomly connected network that you see here. So there is so this was the row stride of 26, which means that there are roughly 26 times 2 a number of input neurons and some number of hidden neurons that is created that is a result of eons, and then two output neurons, one representing the high and the other representing the low PT. So we were able to get an efficiency of 91 or close to 92% and a rejection value of 26%. And the surprising thing was, if you look at the DNN results that our collaborators had carried out, uh, and both the signal efficiency and as well as the data signal efficiency was more or less close to what the quantized DNN was performing, whereas the data reduction is something where we still need to improve upon. Uh, and uh, and then this is how the turn on curve basically looks like, where you have the true PT or the turn on curve performance of the trained SNN. So as you can see is that on very low true the low PT values, the it basically we want it to be like a gradual decrease in or a decrease in the number of samples that are identified as high PT. And as we go to very high PT values, we ideally the target is to have this as close to 100% as possible. Uh, so the underlying point is that the efficiency part, wherein looking at the high high momentum clusters, being able to identify that is the most crucial part of this problem. Um, so we don't want to reject those as a result of the SNN or the machine learning within the sensor. In order to compare, both the DNN and the SNN, in terms of the parameters, like you can see that the amount of parameters is nearly reduced to half compared to that what we got within the DNA studies. And so so this is basically looking at the algorithmic exploration and the overall data encoding and training strategies that we use to develop a neuromorphic solution for the smart pixel problem. And next, so this was published at Icons last year in 2023. Um, and then recently, we also concluded another work on looking at the hardware co-design strategies for realizing this neural network onto a neuromorphic onto basically having a neuromorphic design on an FPGA. So this was basically a co-design study where we did a digital design of the spiking neural network onto the FPGA using so this was the co-design strategy, and the goal was to basically have like a very low latency output of the low latency output of of the network's decision. That is, within one network cycle or the one time step of an SNN, can that correspond to one processor cycle? So this was carried out using so the design process was carried out using a high-level synthesis generator, and the target was an FPGA with which was based on the embedded AMD Xilinx RTX 7 board running at 100 megahertz. So roughly the initial latency was 10 nanoseconds, which is one of the requirements of the larger HEP problem that we have at hand. Um, so I'll not go over into the details, but I think the paper NeuroSpark will be published soon as proceedings of ICONS 2024. So you can have a look at it. So yeah, so I think that brings to the end of my talk. So basically, what with this study, we can say that neuromorphic computing, while there are several avenues to for improvement, but it's still like these initial work show that there is promising promise towards having efficient algorithms and hardware solutions for the high energy physics community as well as various other scientific applications. And while our the SNN's signal efficiency was comparable with that of DNN, but the resulting model had 2 times fewer parameters. Um, and then we also did a implementation of or like a digital design of the trained SNN onto FPGAs, and also we also currently have some work going on exploring the non-volatile memory or the resistive RAM based arrays to realize these SNNs for such low latency and low power applications. Um, in terms of the future directions, like I mentioned, because of the spike encoding of the sensor data, that basically also reduces the amount of data that is being processed by the downstream models hugely. So this basically has promising avenues for designing efficient neuromorphic sensors with event-driven data processing capabilities. And also smart neuromorphic sensors would definitely have great potential in edge applications with severe area, power, and latency constraints. So so yeah, that I think brings to the end of my talk. In terms of our collaborators, we had collaborators from several organizations and universities. One primarily being our close collaborator is University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and Fermi National Lab, and so the rest, Fermi National Lab and John Hopkins, they were all there to provide us with the data and give us the DNN comparison for our SNN. So yeah, so this work was funded by Department of Energy under the Abisco project. So yeah, that concludes my talk. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll be happy to take any questions. Sorry. Uh,
Thank you very much, Shruti. Are there any questions from the audience? If not, let me go ahead and ask a question. I'm curious about your thoughts on implementation of spiking neural networks for medical imaging. What applications do you think it would have, and do you think it could help with utilizing like or improving signal to noise ratios, etc.? Like, what are your thoughts on SNNs for medical imaging?
I think, yeah, I mean, at the moment, I know there are like certain application or demonstrations of using SNNs for like say image segmentation kind of problem, which is I guess one of the problems that that is being solved in the by the biomedical or medical imaging community. Um, so there are like ways to map, existing DNN solutions in SNNs, and people have shown that, we potentially get like, significant improvement in the energy efficiency. But then, in terms of the model, so far, what I've seen is that in terms of the, so such mapping strategies basically just look at training or taking like a large DNN and then mapping that mapping the ReLU neurons to spiking neurons. So the model size more or less remains the same. Maybe there is some benefit by quantizing the real valued data into spike trains. So that's one benefit. But in terms of if you want to really reduce the model size, we would need to think of different strategies to train. Like for example, like eons is one way that we have been looking at, wherein we basically get like a very small neural network, and and also so that basically also allows us to save upon the area and memory of when it's realized on the hardware. I think in terms of I think there is definitely a lot of scope, in terms of, how do you want to, come up with neuromorphic solutions for medical imaging. And then I guess another application is in terms of, inverse imaging, wherein you take like 2D samples of the image data and convert it into a 3D model. I think that's another problem that we are currently looking at. Can neuromorphic or spiking neural networks be able to do that? I agree in terms of the accuracy or the accuracy of such solutions. There's still a lot to be explored on that front.
All right, wonderful. Um, just one more question. For anybody who's interested in getting started with spiking neural networks, what resources would you recommend?
So there are like multiple. I think the best way to start off would be in terms of understanding the working with the simulators. So as of now, the I think one of the more open source simulators that are available are called SNN Torch and Nest. SNN Torch is more of someone who's familiar with PyTorch can easily get into that, or get acquainted with SNN Torch, which basically allows you to create layered networks of or convolution type of networks with spiking neurons, and also implement certain approximate gradient descent kind of algorithms to train them. And the other one, if you want to try out more, random connected networks, Nest is the a better, tool available out there.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, yeah, and also hopefully, in the future, like as I mentioned, that we are also currently developing, working on the super neuro, simulator tool, which kind of where we are trying to combine both the flexibility that neuromorphic or these uh, brain-like neural network connections that or any to any connections that we can implement in a spiking neural networks versus like the speed and the speed and the training ability that SNN Torch or PyTorch offers. So that's something that we are currently working on, and hopefully it should be out in a couple of soon, in a couple of months or so.
Wonderful. Yeah, looking forward to that and looking forward to your continued work to bring SNNs to the edge because I think that's where they'll have the most impact is at the edge, serving for high energy particle physics or for medical applications or for various real-time imaging applications. So love your work and very happy to have you in our first seminar for this speaker series. And thank you again so much for